Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to give you my opinion on the Pulse token price prediction, on where I think Pulse can be. And it's not as much as a specific price prediction, because that's going to require understanding where the actual price per Pulse is going to be at when it launches. More or less what I'm going to give you is I'm going to show you what I believe we can earn on the Pulse token and how high I think it can go within a reasonable amount of time, that reasonable period of time being over the next year or two. Now, I'm excited to do this video because when I've looked at what other people have done when they've done Pulse token price predictions, their price predictions for the Pulse token oftentimes are very, very high, or there are people out there who are very, very negative. There are people who hate the developer. They hate the fact that he created Hex. They hate that the origin address for Hex ended up buying into the Pulse chain. They can't stand it. And then I see people say, you know, what about this? It's centralized. It's going to fail. I'm excited to do this video because I'm somewhere in the middle on all of that. I like to think that I can be objective. I will say that I missed out tremendously on Hex, but I think that I can give a fairly good argument on what I think is going to happen on this project when it launches and why. Now, I'm going to go through my concerns at the end of the video for the project, and then I'm going to talk about why I think it even beat my best expectations as well. I want to also go ahead and answer some of the common questions out there about the Pulse token being, overly centralized, or the origin of address putting in something like $14 billion, $15 billion or something crazy like that into this ecosystem. I actually think that's going to be a good thing, but I understand what people are concerned about at the same time. So I'm going to cover the good, bad, the ugly, and at the end I'm going to leave you with my thoughts on where Pulse is going to be. Now I want to first talk about the negative, I want to talk about the positive, and then I'll go into where I think is going to happen to the price. So the negative is this. For those of you who don't know, the way Pulse Chain launched is they used something called a bonding curve. Now, this is both good and bad, but what it ended up doing is it required people to come in and sacrifice. You're looking at the screen now. Sacrifice phase is over. Do not sacrifice any more money. You know there are people still sacrificing, which is nuts because they're just losing money. But the sacrifice phase is over. What that meant in order to sacrifice is you literally sent cryptocurrency to the sacrifice address and it was gone. There's no guarantee you'll get anything back. There can be no expectation of getting anything back. Of course, everybody expects to get something back. Otherwise, they would not have done it for nothing. So there's over $15 billion, I believe, that have been sacrificed. $15 billion worth of cryptocurrency. Think about that. The concern is this going to launch? Now, the developer has a great track record, and he did Hex, and it launched, and it did very, very well and beat all expectations for the most part. Not for the most part, it beat all expectations. Now, the question is it going to actually launch? I do believe it's going to launch, or I would have not sent funds here, but it is the next big concern. When does testnet launch? When does mainnet launch? And does it work as advertised? Because you see, at this point, we haven't seen anything. This is the risk in this project. We are in super early, but it's also why hopefully the project does well and our returns do very, very well also. If the project delivers on the promise of faster, cheaper transactions, a lot of people get upset. Richard Hart is doing it, and I hate Richard Hart, yada, yada, yada. Listen, that's letting your ego cost you money. At the end of the day, if the project delivers on faster transactions, cheaper transactions, if Pulse Chain can pull that off, that alone will cause it to be able to rival Matic. It will rival Binance Smart Chain. No questions asked. At 100%, it will rival both Binance Smart Chain and the Matic network. That's if it delivers on that promise. Now, people say, well, what about the fact that, Richard Hart starting it? Nobody cares. Nobody genuinely cares. People are like, no, Ethereum devs aren't going to go over to the Pulse Chain. You're right. If they want to keep their project stuffed up with high gas fees and they really want to have their ego anchored in on the Ethereum blockchain, and most of them may be vested into Ethereum, but at the end of the day, they want their project to work and work well. They want their project to see mass adoption. What dev is putting a project out there not to see people interact with it? And when there's an ecosystem that it can easily move over to, in fact, it will if it's a decentralized project, it's going to automatically be set up on the Pulse chain. It's going to work. And if it's a truly decentralized project, it doesn't matter if the dev wants to monitor it, work with it or not. It's already going to work on the Pulse chain. By the way, if you don't know what Pulse chain is at this point in the video, and you're like, what is this Pulse chain? I did an entire video, I'll link it above, explaining exactly what Pulse chain is. But in a nutshell, it is a fork or a clone of the Ethereum blockchain, the entire Ethereum blockchain, for the most part, including the entire Ethereum ecosystem, like a Uniswap, for example, will already exist once Pulse chain is officially launched. So you're going to have faster, cheaper transactions, and it's going to exist on a chain, include a full decentralized ecosystem from the very beginning. If it pulls that off, then that's going to be huge. I believe that alone makes this project incredible. Like, it's going to change crypto futures, not to mention crypto fortunes. The amount of projects that can exist. I looked at a project today that's running on Matic. I've got a video I'm going to be talking about later, a fully decentralized trading platform that I've seen that offers functionality that I've never seen. The problem with that decentralized trading platform, even though it exists on one of the fastest blockchains currently, is that blockchain still is not fast enough. My immediate thought was, man, if this could exist on something like Pulse chain, it could be a total game changer, and hopefully the devs are paying attention to Pulse chain. We'll have to wait and see. I can't wait to see what projects come over to Pulse chain. So now, why do I think this could do well? I'm going to cover that, and then I'm going to cover the price prediction of where I think it goes from here, because I think there's a lot of people missing something on price. Like, I genuinely think there's a lot of people missing this. The reason I think that it could do well, let me first address the whole idea of the $15 billion worth coming into the Pulse chain for the origin address. Without going into all the details on what Hex did, essentially over the course of a year, $15 billion worth of Hex ended up going to what was known as an origin address, the way the project launched. That $15 billion has been mostly untouched until it came in and got sacrificed for Pulse chain, which means that address will get a tremendous amount of Pulse tokens. That address was the cornerstone address for the entire Hex ecosystem, which existed prior to Pulse chain. Now, the developer that a lot of people love to hate behind this platform is Richard Hart. He's very intelligent, but he doesn't realize how he comes off. Like, he won't, at least I'm assuming he doesn't realize how he comes off. And I know I'm going to upset some people. But being objectively, you have to recognize, like, Richard Hart thinks people actually care how many Rolexes he has. People actually care how gaudy the Louis Vuitton stuff is. He thinks he's virtue signaling that he's successful. And he's right. People do like to see that. I agree with that part. I agree with what he's attempting to do wholeheartedly. But I think that he doesn't realize how bad he's missing the mark. Like, it doesn't make him look successful in this case because he's trying to virtue signal with everything behind him. If he just had a really nice backdrop of a nice looking office, then that would be virtue signaling enough, and that's all he would have to do. But instead, it looks really awkward. It looks like he's squeezed into a corner of a room. He's probably not. The dude probably lives in a mansion. I don't know. It's irrelevant. But his social skills on camera is what I think turns people off. And the fact that he is definitely works very hard to prove how great he is. He really wants recognition for what he's accomplished. And here's the thing. He really has accomplished some extraordinary things. If people were objective about it, what has happened with Hex is incredible. Even the engineering of the community, and I say engineering of the community is because he's helped foster that community. That part is brilliant. Doing the live streams that he does, the way he does it, talking about projects, debating people, it's brilliant. Very few people are able to stand toe-to-toe with that man and be able to debate blockchain concepts. Very few. That is brilliant. To say that he's not intelligent, you would have to be a moron. He is polarizing, and people love him and people hate him. But here's what works in our favor as Pulse chain investors, and for this matter, Hex. Which, by the way, I actually think it's possible the best investment in all of this is not going to be Pulse. Meaning the investment that could do the best when Pulse launches is actually not Pulse. I'll tell you what I'm talking about here in a moment. Let's get back to Richard Hart. Because Richard Hart desperately wants approval that recognizes that he's making a lifelong impact in the crypto ecosystem, and make no mistake about it, he actually already has. The guy's done a lot for educating people about blockchain, decentralization, some of the shortcomings of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, with all that also being said, he definitely speaks from his own bias, and what I will say is the man is intelligent, and he is on a mission to prove his mark. And unfortunately or fortunately, the level of recognition that he wants in the crypto space may be far more recognition than anybody has gotten in crypto. Like, I believe this guy has an insatiable appetite to prove that he's the most knowledgeable, the most accurate, and he gets it right. And he knows how great he is. If you don't believe it, if you don't know how great he is, just ask him. He'll tell you. I mean, the man is truly proud to be humble. But at the same time, that sort of human, I don't know, that sort of human, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Because I don't want to say shortcoming, because it's also why he's accomplished so much. But his need for recognition, for accomplishing something extraordinary that he does not already recognize what he's accomplished, I don't believe. But that need that he has propels him forward. It's what motivates him. It's what he works tirelessly for, to create something that is extraordinary. And I think the reason Pulse Chain is even getting created, first and foremost, he says it's because his previous project Hex needed some place to be able to transact in that was cheaper. And I think that's true. But I think Pulse Chain, he knows, has a chance to be a far more impactful project on the entire ecosystem in crypto. And I think that is as much of a motivator for him more than anything else. And I think that he's going to stop at nothing to do his best to get recognition for his accomplishments in this ecosystem. And that is why I'm not worried about the origin address, which I do believe he controls. I'm not worried about the origin address owning Pulse. I could be proven wrong. Nothing in this video should be considered financial advice. But I believe that he will do whatever it takes to make certain that he has a project that does two things, and it has to do both of these things. It can't do one of them. I believe that he wants a project that's going to enrich himself in the long run, and I believe that he wants a project that's going to enrich humanity in the long run. And he wants credit for both. He wants you to know he's rich and successful at what he's done, and he wants you to know that he's done well by humanity in a very big way. Even bigger than the donations to the Sins Foundation that he's done. And so I think, or that his projects have done. So that I think because he wants to accomplish those two things, and he has the intellectual capacity to be able to create something like the Pulse Chain, I believe in my heart of hearts that that's why this has a lot of potential to do very, very well. And it's mainly why I'm not worried about the origin address, because I don't think that he's going to dump Pulse on the market. He could. And maybe he could dump small amounts of it. He wouldn't have to dump large amounts of it. Maybe he could dump small amounts of it. And maybe that's why there's so much in here. But I actually predicted with a friend of mine. In fact, there's a video I did, probably the first video I ever did on Pulse. I said I wouldn't be shocked if the origin address came into Pulse. And a buddy of mine, told me he thought I was crazy. He's like, there's no way. There's a lot of money there. And I said, yes, but Hex, if he does not sacrifice the Hex, he can't sell it to cash anything out, because he would dump the price. There's not a ton of liquidity on Hex to be able to not that kind of liquidity. Coming over the Pulse Chain with the sacrifice phase, with the bonded curve, the way that it was set up, it was able for a tremendous amount of USD value to come in, and it would not move market price the way the bonded curve was set up. In fact, I believe that was the biggest reason the bonded curve was set up this way. With that being said, because of the community, because of Richard Hart's intellect, and because of his desire to make an impact, I believe all of that combined, and his ability to market, he marketed Hex very, very well, and the need that is going to fix, let's not overstate that enough. Right now, Ethereum needs a layer 2 solution or a fork. It needs something that will allow people, if Ethereum doesn't need it, the developers need it. They need something that's going to allow people to transact very, very quickly, very, very cheaply. And Pulse Chain is promising to pull that off. If he accomplishes these things, I don't know how this thing does not go up. I don't know how it does not do very, very well. And listen, I'm trying to be objective in what I'm seeing here in this space, and I don't take this the wrong way. I'm not trying to hate on Richard Hart at all in any way, shape, or form. I'm investing in this project. I will admit I miss Hex. He got my attention. And I fully understand what the origin address did. I fully understand what it did in the launch of Hex. And at first, I was critical of it, and I didn't talk about it, but I just thought, I just don't love that. But what he ultimately did, those of you that were in the early stages of Hex, you know what I'm talking about. What he did ultimately was he created momentum, and the community picked up that momentum and ran with it, and it has just worked flawlessly. Love it or hate it, there's massive price appreciation. So here's what I think about where we're going with Pulse Chain. So it's important to, let's just first look at a couple things. What could Pulse Chain compete with currently? Currently, Pulse Chain compete with Binance Coin. I think it's going to compete with Binance Coin directly. It also could compete with, let's see what we got. Maybe Polkadot. Maybe you can see some competition there. Let's see. Let's look at Matic. Matic's at $1.14 right now. The market cap of Matic is $7 billion with a B. I actually think we're going to beat Polygon Matic almost out of the gate. Almost out of the gate. I think it's a foregone conclusion. And here's why I think that. The market capitalization for Matic is $7 billion. A lot of people, including Jahar, like to say market cap doesn't matter. It's just a vanity metric. Well, let's understand how market cap is created. It's the current value of a token multiplied all of the tokens that exist. Multiply that out. That's how you come up with the fully diluted. That's how you come up with the market cap. Sorry, or the fully diluted market cap, really. However, market capitalization is a vanity metric because if you own all the Polygon in the world, you could not sell it for $11 billion. Who's going to buy it? There's no one there to buy it. The current price, if you were to sell even a billion tokens, is going to drop the price. So market capitalization in and of itself is a vanity metric. However, it does represent some sort of value that this project has. And if you understand that alone, let's take a look for a minute. I want to point something out here I'm going to oversimplify this a little bit. So this is 0, and this is price this way, and this is time this way. Pulse Chain will start at 0. And right here, by the way, we'll say this is 15 billion. This is the amount of value that was sacrificed. Pulse Chain will launch at 0. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to stay there. It may not stay there very long at all, but it will launch at 0 right away. People don't understand that. Richard Hart himself has said it would launch at 0. There are several reasons he wants it to launch at 0. He wants it to launch at 0 because that means the people who sacrifice, first of all, if they sacrifice and they got something of value for their sacrifice, then that would create a taxable event. He said very specifically in more than one of his live streams that it will start out with a 0 value. When it starts out with a 0 value, it doesn't create a taxable event. However, shortly after launch, it will have a value. It will have a market on decentralized exchanges very, very quickly. And it may go up super fast. There may be one candle that goes straight up. Now, how high will it go? Will it cross the 15 billion? Does it need to cross the 15 billion? 15 billion, just to keep this simple, $15 billion of value went into the sacrifice. For any of those people, for the smallest guy to be able to sell any PLS tokens or Pulse tokens and be at a point where he could break even on the amount that he sacrificed, then ultimately the market capitalization has to get to 15 billion, or it has to artificially, some people like to say, well, market cap is artificial. It's a vanity metric. It is. But the tokens have to sell at a point that they could provide that 15 billion. If he puts in $1,000 in sacrifice crypto and he wants to get $1,000 out, he has to be able to sell tokens that are based on a value, and he got his share of those tokens based on what he put in and of course when he put in. So I'm oversimplifying this a little bit, but for simple math's sake, to be able to get out at break even for the person who went into the sacrifice phase, the value has to get up to 15 billion. Now, once you understand that, and the question is, people say, well, it's going to get there really quickly. I think that's probably likely. A lot of people say, well, it's not going to get there but so quick because what if people sell? Well, you would have to be selling at a loss. Now, I actually believe this will happen. I know it will happen. I've been in crypto long enough. I call it a crypto mentality. People in crypto do things all the time that makes no sense. But I don't think the majority of people are going to sell at a loss. And because the origin address literally has, 15 to 1 almost of the tokens, then the origin address would have to dump. Richard Hart, I don't believe would ever do that because he wants to see this project do well. He wants to take credit for the project doing very, very well. Ultimately, it's not a cash grab for him. He wants the project to do well first and foremost, and then he wants to get wealthy because the project does well. And then he wants you to know that he got wealthy and his project did really, really well and helped humanity. That's what he's after. So because of that, I believe that he's not going to dump the origin address tokens. And I believe relatively quickly we're going to get to a market capitalization of $15 billion right here. I don't know if it's going to happen the first day. It could. Or the first week. It could. The question is, what do people do once it gets here? Do they start dumping? And how many people, there's going to be somebody, but how many people are able to get in here? You're going to have to get in very, very fast. But on this run up right here, how many people can get in here? It's not going to be a lot. If you're sitting around waiting for super cheap pulse, I don't think there's going to be super cheap pulse. There may be some cheap pulse that goes out there. The price may pull back, but I don't think it's going to pull back but so far. I, for one, have an equal amount of what I put into the sacrifice ready to buy if I can buy it for cheaper than what I sacrificed it at. So I have some, and I'm certain there's a lot of people that have some quote-unquote dry funds on the side waiting to go in if there is a chance to be able to get it cheap. Keep in mind, almost $1 billion was raised just from the community alone. $1 billion alone just from the community, just under $1 billion. There's at least that much more on the sideline, of which 15 billion or 14 billion of this whole supply is going to be owned by the origin address of Hex, which, keep in mind, sat in the Hex ecosystem for over a year, 18 plus months, and never sold anything. So when you put that into perspective, you know it's not going to sell right here either, below the sacrifice price, or the price of what people sacrifice for. Ultimately, we're going to have a $15 billion market cap. No question. I believe that's going to happen. And if the project works, I believe it will go up from there. The question comes in to how high does it go up? Now, again, I told you, I don't think Pulse is going to be the real winner here. I'll explain what I'm talking about in a minute, but let's stick with Pulse. How high is it going to go up? Well, if you come over, let's go back to CoinMarketCap for a minute. And I know the Hex guys hate CoinMarketCap, but it's okay. Most people use it. If you look at the Binance Smart Chain, it's at $62 billion. If we go from $15 billion and we surpass Binance token, then you're talking about what? A 4 to 5x right here. Now, let's just say it goes up to Ethereum. Well, for it to go to Ethereum, it would have to 25x is what it would have to do. And that's to surpass Ethereum. I do believe we beat Binance Smart Chain and Binance token. I don't believe we beat Ethereum yet. Not in the current state. I don't think that's a current stated goal at all. I don't think we do that now. I do believe Richard Hart would love to. I believe Richard Hart would like to be number one. He'd love to take over Bitcoin. And I believe that's got to be the world's best case hopium fantasy scenario on the planet. But my goodness, if it happened, I would be along for the ride. I believe that my opinion is we're going to do somewhere between here, Binance Coin, and Ethereum. Saying that, keep in mind, I'm saying that on current market valuations. Over the next year or two, the market cap could 3x, could 4x, could 5x, could 10x. I don't know whether we're going to be in a bull market or a bear market. I don't know what's going to happen long term, and with the regulations coming down from countries around the world. But I think it's pretty safe to say, my guess, I'm going to give you the number. But again, I don't think this is the best scenario. Like, I actually think it does better than, I think there's other investments that do better than this. But I think that we're going to see probably a 10x. A 10x. And I would love to see a 100x or a 1000x. But I think that we're going to see a 10x. Now, what is my plan? I'm going to hold it for a couple of years. I'm planning to hold it at least for a year no matter what. But I want to hold it at least for a couple of years. But I think we're going to see at least a 10x. And I'd love a 100x. I don't know how we get to that. I don't know how we get there. See, guys talking about 100x, 1000x. I don't know how we get there. Now, there is a scenario that I can think about. And I'll come back to this. There is a wild card in all of this that could cause it to go absolutely bonkers. I mean, absolutely bonkers, that not enough people have thought about. And it's kind of a unpredictable wild card. I'll talk about that in a minute, what could cause Pulse to go bonkers. But let me tell you, I told you I thought something else may be the better investment in all of this. And that's going to be Hex. So many of you have been in Hex. I'm not in Hex right now. But I do see a scenario where Hex could drastically outperform Pulse Chain. And let me explain why. Hex is going to have a p-Hex version on the Pulse Chain. Hex is native on Ethereum, but it's going to have a p-Hex version. And that version is going to exist the moment that there's a fork. So if you have, theoretically, if you have $1,000 worth of Hex, the moment the fork goes live, the mainnet goes live for Pulse Chain, the moment that happens, you're going to have probably $1,000 in value on, I'm oversimplifying it, but you're going to have pretty close to equal value on the Hex, on the Pulse ecosystem. However, that value is going to be tied to the performance of Pulse. So just like if you have a token that's on Ethereum and Ethereum goes up, that token value normally goes up. There is a possible scenario where p-Hex launches connected to the Pulse Chain, and if the Pulse Chain goes up, let's just say it goes from 0, right? It's going to go from 0 to whatever it takes to get each pulse to a rough market capitalization of 15 billion. That entire time ride up, which is an enormous 1000x plus % return or whatever, on that ride up in pulse chain up to the 15 billion, that could possibly, I see a scenario where that could pump the hex price to the moon without getting complicated explaining on why that occurs and why it might not occur or why it should occur. Basically just know that, because hex is on the pulse chain, it could cause price movement of the hex token itself. And I think that could be very, very interesting. And let's see what it does to Ethereum and whatnot as well. Now, that may not happen, but it could absolutely happen. And I think I can see I don't think the price of hex is going to go down. The price of Ethereum p-ETH might go down. People who are like, if there's a bunch of ETH heads who are like, no, I don't want Ethereum on Pulse chain. They may dump their, free Ethereum, their airdropped Ethereum. They may dump it and they may jump back over to Ethereum. That could happen. But I could see a scenario where the Hexicans, the Hex investors, are not going to do that. They're going to embrace the Pulse chain. So the Hex value on Pulse could drastically outpace. I see a scenario where it could outpace Hex on the Ethereum side. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, there's a wild card where I could see Pulse 100x or even 1000x. There is a wild card. What's the wild card? The wild card's Richard himself. The man wants to see it do well. He's going to own over 90%, 95% of it based on or control it through the origin address. If he somehow locks that up or burns it or discards it, or who knows what I said discard, who knows what he does with it. But if he does that, and now even half of it, if he just announces that and he sends it to some sort of burn address or whatever he does, that sort of move could pump the entire thing beyond anyone's expectation or based on any of these parameters right here. Because if he did that, effectively what would happen is there would be half the amount of, let's just say he did it with half his value. Then that's going to be roughly half the amount of tokens. So you would not need the price to go, the price would have to go up twice as much basically to get to the 15 billion valuation of the market capitalization. And again, before you say market cap doesn't matter, price per token matters. Tokens have a value across the number of circulating supply. That's going to give you market cap. You can argue that it doesn't matter all you want. There's a certain amount of value that someone has to be able to sell for, and it has to get to that value before someone can quote unquote sell and break even. That valuation is going to be somewhere around the $15 billion mark, most likely, in my opinion. I'm not certain what other scenario you get there unless Richard Hart does something interesting with his supply or with the tokens that he holds. And I do believe that's possible. He's not talked about it. He's not mentioned it. He's not hinted at it. But it would cause the project to do well. He would still financially do very, very well, and he's going to be able to, basically take credit, if you will, even if he takes indirect credit. He's going to be able to take indirect credit for launching a project that has done very well and ultimately makes a lot of people a lot of money. Without that wild card, my prediction for where Hex goes is going to be 10x. 10x over I'll say over 1 to 2 years. Where does it go beyond that? Could we see 100x even without some sort of game theory shenanigans? Yes, but it's going to require the entire market to go up. If the market capitalization across the board, the whole cryptocurrency market capitalization goes up, 5x, then I think we can see this definitely doing more than a 20x, and more than a 5x. And the reason is because I think this is going to be such a big, Pulse is going to be such a big player in the ecosystem that we could see it do, more than just a 5x, 50x. So in that scenario, if the entire market cap goes up 5x, then I think this 10x is going to go up more than another 5x. So maybe 50 to 100. That's assuming a significant move in the entire crypto market, which could happen. We'll just have to wait and see, ladies and gentlemen. I am in the Pulse chain. I'm excited to operate on the Pulse chain in this ecosystem. I think people who are not paying attention to this are just simply missing out, or they're letting their ego, they think Richard Hart is the one with the ego, but they can't look at a project objectively and realize, hey, if it works, it's going to work. They got to argue about things like decentralization. By the way, I'm a huge fan of decentralization, but unfortunately what I recognize is that the mass amount of the crypto community, the crypto market at large, the crypto investors at large, they're less concerned about decentralization and more concerned usability of the product. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. This has been my Pulse token price prediction. I think we're headed for a 10x, $150 billion market cap over the next 2 years. not financial advice. I'm just a cryptocurrency enthusiast. I love cryptocurrency and I love this technology. If you love earning passive income with cryptocurrency, if you love learning about this technology, then make certain that you go down to the description and subscribe to our Crypto Passive Profits newsletter. By the way, if you want to find out how I'm earning some passive income, I did a video yesterday or day before yesterday where I was showing that I am earning over 500% APY on a very interesting high risk platform. If you're curious about that, I'll put a video on the end screen. Go ahead and check it out. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Decentralized cryptocurrency equals freedom. This is Crypto Wealth. I'm out.